Welcome to Crash Course in Commercial Real Estate. We converted our in-house training program to a podcast to teach you prospecting, negotiation, business planning, and other fundamental skills to become a successful commercial real estate agent. And now, here's your host, Brady Collier.
All right, and welcome back to Commercial Real Estate Training. I'm Brady Collier, a commercial real estate broker in Lubbock, Texas. I'm training Shannon Powell, a new commercial real estate agent with our company. And if you haven't logged in before, we're doing a series of 40 podcasts on what being a commercial real estate agent looks like, feels like, and what you need to know to do so. And when I put together the 40 episodes that I thought were really important, I passed it around my office and asked the other agents, is there anything that you think would be more important for her to know than the items I have on my sheet? And Joe Magby in our office said one thing that she needs to know up front are who her friends in the industry are. I thought that was really good, and so he gave me some notes, and so we're just going to do one whole session on friends of the industry. So Joe, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Of course.
So tell me, let's just go through these. You named several of people that you deal with on a regular basis, quote unquote friends in the industry, that make your life easier if they're your friends, or that if you don't have close relationships with them, it can be really difficult. So when you think of people like that, whether you want to start with something general or dive right in, where do you go?
I think, I was just thinking about this because when you started getting into the commercial real estate space, you kind of come with this idea of, I don't really know anything. I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to say something dumb. And so sometimes it can be really intimidating to talk to an attorney on the phone or to talk to a contractor.
Did I hear yes come from the peanut section?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it can be kind of intimidating. And so, but when you think of them as friends, and then it becomes less so, because I can't tell you how many times you call a contractor, you call an engineer and say, hey, my client needs this. Can you walk me through what that process looks like? Or, you call somebody that you know at the title company, you say, hey, my client's asking for this. We have a lender asking for this. Do you know what that means? Or, a lot of times those folks are a lot more helpful than you think. And they're pleased as punch to be able to talk about the industry that they run in, because that's what they do every day. And so.
No, that's really good. I think they're pleased as punch for two reasons. A, I find people just want to help. I mean, people are just helpful more than you would ever expect, and especially new people. So I find that they're helpful for that reason. And then all of the people that are on this list that we're about to go through, because I took some notes after you gave me this, every single one of them makes their living by working with either you or your clients. And so it's a real symbiotic relationship with all the ones I thought of, and I'll let you go through if there's any you thought of that weren't on my list. But let's start with attorney. That was one that you put on the list. I would say on our every deal we do, not every brokerage deal, but almost every development deal I do for sure, there's attorneys on both sides. And thinking of them as friends as opposed to adversaries is super helpful. So talk about it. I just shared from a developer perspective. Share from a broker's perspective how attorneys help you in your business.
Yeah, I think I had a deal recently where, I had buyer and seller on these sides, and then both of their attorneys were involved. And so everything is getting, kind of discussed secondhand, and I'm kind of the linchpin between, buyer's attorney to buyer to me to seller's attorney, and then back. And so it was just getting really convoluted, and it came down to a point where it's like, hey, let's just get both of the attorneys on the same line and let's just talk about this and figure out a way forward. And so sometimes that can be really helpful as far as bringing them in as the experts in law, because obviously we're not allowed to practice law. I'm not a lawyer. I tell people that all the time. I'm not a lawyer. I can't give you that kind of advice. But having that good relationship with an attorney right out of the gate, where it's not adversarial, it's not one against the other. It's simply, hey, let's talk. Let's help get our client, who's probably in the middle between us, to a degree. Let's get them the best deal. Let's get them protected as best as we can. And so, having that good relationship right out of the gate with your friend, the attorney, you're allowed to sort of work together, where you're doing on the real estate side, but they're doing on the legal side, and protecting you and your client, or both of your client, from doing something that's going to get you into trouble later on.
What do you say to the client who says, "Oh, Joe, yeah, I appreciate that recommendation to bring in an attorney, but why don't me and you just handle that? And you can tell that they don't want to bring an attorney in because they don't want to pay $300, $400, $500 an hour of fees to work the contract or whatever. What do you tell that client?
I say, well, firstly, I don't have that kind of license. I'm not allowed to practice law. I'm not allowed to give you this kind of legal advice. I always say I highly recommend you get an attorney because it's going to be worth it on the other side. And so if something happens, you want to be able to say going into this that you were comfortable with it, you're comfortable with the deal the way it's worded, you're comfortable with the contract the way it's worded because it's legally binding, and you want somebody who has that area of expertise to then be able to advise you well and say, let's change this, let's work this out, because they are going to have that mind that sees how could this turn into a lawsuit down the road, and a lawsuit is infinitely more expensive than a couple hours worth of attorney's fees. Yeah. So it's kind of, maybe bite the bullet here for a second now, or you can bite a much larger bullet down the road.
And so let me just paint a few different scenarios. If you're using the state form that's promulgated, you can strike things from it, you can add to it. An attorney they can add an addendum or they can add things to the back of it. With the state form, you're pretty much down the fairway. It's a lot easier. But most real estate, especially larger transactions, are not transacted on the state form. They're on attorney drafted forms. And if you ever have a client who is negotiating a deal on an attorney drafted form, you have to get an attorney on the other side, because there's every clause, every phrase, every part of that thing is normally in the favor of the person who hired the attorney to draw up the contract. So in that case, you got to get the person you're representing to get their attorney to review that. Never are we going to be qualified to review, nor do we want the liability of reviewing a contract and blessing it for our client. We want some legal counsel to jump in on that. Do you agree?
Because what you hate is, you're 6 months into a contract timeline, and then something comes up in the contract, and you should have caught this or whatever. You don't want to be in that position at all. You want to say, hey, listen, your attorney blessed this, and so this is what it is, and I'm not allowed to get in there and give you legal advice. So that's just a better position to be in.
When we all run in our lanes, you're the deal maker. You're as Joe said, the person in between all the parties to make sure the deal stays on track. But when we all stay in our lanes and let the attorney handle the legal side, and having a great relationship with an attorney, because a lot of your clients won't know an attorney, and you say, I've got a really good real estate attorney I highly recommend, and it's somebody you're used to working with. Okay. There are attorneys that are deal makers. They get the big picture. They see the objectives. They're going to help they're going to help put a deal together. And then there are attorneys that are not used to real estate law. They're probate attorneys. They're divorce attorneys. They have no business doing real estate law because they don't know. And so guiding your client towards the right attorney, that's a friend in the industry that's worth its weight in gold. Great recommendation on that. Let's cover a few more here. I've got 4 more people I've identified, maybe 5. Who would you say is the next most important, next most often utilized, or somebody who you frequently call on that is your friend in the industry? Maybe they get business from you, so you give them business, but then they also help you do your business.
I would say for the commercial person, for the commercial broker, you want to look at appraisers. You really want to know appraisers because in our world, there's so many, when you're looking for comps on a property, some brokers aren't really great about sharing that information, but appraisers generally, if you have a good relationship with them, appraisers will just kind of rattle off, hey, this one sold over here, this one leased over here, and they'll know just some of those things. And especially if it's a good relationship where you're giving them business, then they help you kind of cut through a lot of frustration with comps websites and stuff like that are all incomplete and whatever, and they can give you the accurate information. So I would say appraisers is a really good friend to have.
Let me just jump in on you right there. So normally the bank is you're going to put the deal together. When the person goes for financing, the bank has to engage the appraiser. So that there's laws that require that. But Joe's right. Over 20 years, I've built relationships with most all of the commercial appraisers in West Texas. And here's the deal. When they call and say, hey, I'm doing an appraisal, I don't have any comparable properties that have sold of this asset class in this area of town, and I really need something to finish my appraisal. We work like a dog to get them something they can use, because sure as the day is long, a month later, we are going to have a client who's making an offer on a piece of land out on South Indiana, and they're going to be like, I don't think it's worth $18, it's worth $15. And if you call your appraiser friend and say, hey, I'm working on some land South Lubbock, can you give me some comps on land sales on Quaker, Indiana University slide between 82nd and Loop 88? And then in your inbox 2 minutes later, you have a whole list of them, and they all come in between $17.50 and $20, and you say, hey, client, here, da-da-da-da-da. He's like, okay. And that guy, with a little bit of his work and with your relationship, it gets you from, I'm stuck on High Center, the deal's back engaged moving forward.
Absolutely.
So appraisers, great friend in the industry. Yeah. Let's move on. Give me another one.
Second one I think would be contractors. It's good to have connections with good, solid, reputable contractors that know what they're doing. That because we get it all the time from tenants. How much do you think it would cost to build this place out? How much do you think it would cost to build a building here? And those are questions that I hate answering. I never want to answer that really, because
Let me make this clear. Do not answer the question, how much will it cost to build this out?
And I always pivot to, that's a really good contractor question, because they just know their lane. They know their business way better than I ever could hope to. And so having those connections where you can, have a tenant or a client or whatever and say, hey, we know of a company here in town that does restaurants all day long. They'll take really good care of you. Same sort of thing where, you're sending them business, and then that they're going to do a good job, and they're not going to be overly expensive, but they're also not going to cut corners and leave your tenant or your client in a place where they're going to be kicking themselves later on. So it's another good one.
It's a great one with contractors, and let me fill in some detail there. You don't, every time you call that contractor, he's excited he got your call because that's a referral of somebody who may build out their, just say you're doing a lease on a restaurant space, 4,000 feet. He wants to build that out. If you call the right contractor and you have a good relationship. So he'll take your call, he'll meet with your client. But he may do that for 10 people to get one assignment. So that's kind of a blessing and a curse. It takes a lot of time. And so if you're always calling in clients that don't do anything, contractors can quit messing with, meeting with your people. But if you tell that 4,000-foot restaurant client, I think you could probably build this out for $450,000 or $500,000 because you had a friend who did that, and then it takes them $750,000 or $800,000, and they're off on their whole budget and everything's off. You're the bad guy. So stay in your lane. Your lane is putting deals together. Contractor's lane is giving pricing on build outs, on building, especially right now we're in 2021, post-COVID, supply shortages, super volatile commodity prices. Nobody knows what price. Nobody's even going to stick with their pricing more than 2 weeks if they give you a quote, and even then they may not because it's so volatile. So don't practice law.
Okay.
And don't be the faux contractor. Yeah. Relationships with contractors, that's a great one. Let's get a few more here before we close out today.
So one of the relationships I've liked to get into is more the title agents, the closing agents with title companies, especially people who are reputable, because anything and everything can and probably will go wrong in a closing period. And it's always nice to be able to call, I think of a guy like Bob Brandt over at, who is, stellar people. They know their business. They know what they're doing. And you say, hey, how do we fix this, or how do we deal with this, or is there anything you need from me? And if you help those guys or gals, then you earn their respect, and suddenly it becomes like you're sidestepping issues before they become issues, and that leaves a lot of egg off of a lot of people's faces at closing tables. So I would say
that's a great one. I also have worked with Bob for a lot of years, and he owns Western Title. But the reason I say title agents, okay, you don't have authority over what appraiser gets used. So it's a good relationship, but you don't have authority there. Contractors, you're referring your clients, but you don't actually get to make the decision. But on title agents, you actually have a lot of input on where it goes. And the title company gets the title policy fee, which is a percentage of the contract price in some formula I don't understand. But most of your clients will say, well, where should I close this? Especially if you're on the listing side. So it's one that the title agents will work hard for you and serve you well because you direct their business to them. They work with all the real estate agents in town. My advice to you would be pick a few that are highly capable, that have a long history in the business, that are well connected, that are characterized by going the extra mile, and take your deals to, you can't take them all to the same person, but spread them out to 2 or 3 that are really, really, really hardworking, trustworthy, honest, that'll work hard. So that relationship is critical, because there's going to be a ton of things you don't understand that they'll just clarify. A general warranty deed versus a special warranty deed, and you're going to forget which one it is, and you got to call your title agent. Hey, can you remind me for the 52nd time the difference in a special and a general warranty deed, or whatever the topic may be. A great resource, a great relationship, and then every time you get to the closing table, we closed another transaction, camaraderie. It's great. So that's a good one.
Yeah.
I've got two more here.
I would say lenders. Lenders is another one that's it's really great, because you get people, especially if you're dealing in kind of wonky asset classes or asset types. Those guys are worth their weight in gold, because they can be the difference between a deal closing and not closing. If someone's got a lending contingency on a contract and they're having a hard time putting money together, being able to say, okay, here's 2 or 3 people that you can again call. I'm not a lender, but you can call these folks, and that they'll take good care of you and kind of talk through options with you. So, and again, it's prepping the ground first of saying, of working with those people beforehand, or at least getting to know them somewhat beforehand, so that they're not just going to turn your client down at the drop of a hat because, we don't do anything less than $10 million, or we don't do anything like this, or we charge X amount for our stuff. So all of those are
That's a good one. We have another episode coming up on pre-qualifying your buyers and your tenants. Not working for extended periods of time with people who don't have the financial capability to perform. If they can't perform on the deal, you got to drop them really early on in the process. And so you're going to learn as you go through the business how to qualify people. Okay. Lenders are going to appreciate when you continually send them a stream of qualified people, because those lenders are getting paid by writing loans. I mean, that's how they make their living. And so they want to work with your people, especially your qualified people. So you'll develop a relationship with 2 or 3 lenders that you trust, that you like, that you enjoy, that are real deal makers. Sometimes really, really big banks have trouble with really flexible small deals, West Texas deals or whatever. So we'll talk about individuals later. But I would say good lenders will also help you with that pre-qualification process early on, to make sure that you're not going down a track that's a lot of time just thrown away. So lenders are a good one.
Yeah. I think the last one we talked about was people with the city, or people with certain municipalities in which you deal. A lot of times you have questions about zoning questions, or you have questions about right of ways, or you have questions about utilities, or having someone that you can call, or that you can forward a client to. Hey, we know so and so over at the city. They'll know exactly the answers to these questions, or just calling that person and say, hey, Aaron, what's the zoning on this spot right over here by the highway? And they'll say, and what are some of the setback requirements on this piece of property? And just having that connection where they're taking your call and you're not wasting their time, but you're just kind of asking them those kind of questions is going to create a lot of value for your client, where you're not showing them spaces that they can't go into, or you're not saying, yeah, we can use all of this for parking when you really can't. All those little things that just help you have more information about a particular property or a particular area or a particular street. That's just going to make you that much more effective as a client rep, or as a tenant rep, buyer rep, whatever all those things go.
Yeah, that's a good one for me. And my majority of my brokerage career was a guy named Randy Henson, who was down at the city. He was the zoning guru. He had forgotten more about zoning than everybody else in Lubbock would ever know. Maybe the guy's name is Aaron now. So that's a great. The zoning people are super important, but there'll be contacts down at the city that'll be very valuable. Let's wrap this up, Joe. With other referral sources, other friends in the industry, is there anybody else that you can think of that either sends you business, or having relationships with them really helps advance your business or makes your transaction process easier or smoother? I've only got one more, but maybe you came up with some I didn't think of.
I would say, on the we only do commercial, so on the commercial side, I would say having friends or people that that are in the residential space is a good way of looking at things, because all the time I get people calling and saying, hey, I have a client who, their company's looking for office space. Do y'all do that? Is always, do you guys do that? Yeah, sure thing. Let's talk. And so having friends in that space where they're running in a somewhat different lane, that's always good too. I get referrals from those folks quite often. So.
I thought about LEDA, the Lubbock Economic Development Alliance, just knowing the people that are, as far as that are helping bring businesses to Lubbock, and having good relationships with community development people. So LEDA was the first community development person that I thought of. But as you go deeper and deeper in your career, build a broader base of real estate influence type relationships, then you'll get referrals from places that you would have never expected, of people who have influence over decision makers in commercial real estate. So that's a really good list. It's a really great topic. I'm glad you thought of it, put it on the list. Do you have any other thoughts or questions on friends in the industry?
I don't.
Okay. Great topic. Thank
Yeah.
you for thinking of it, and we'll be back.